Dr. Amanda Myers. It's so weird saying doctor coming out my mouth. And I'm going to be talking to you a bit about Latin and why I think it's important, and I also kind of want to find out from you, does anyone in here have any background in Latin, any exposure to it, any phrases you know? Yes, good, yes. Right, what do you know?
About half of the Lord's Prayer.
Nice, good, good. Anyone else? Yeah?
I know two phrases.
Yeah.
One's Sic Parvis Magna,
Yeah, good.
and the other is Hodie mecum elis in paradiso.
Well done. Good job, class. Good, good. Anyone else have anything? Yeah?
I remember.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's like Carpe Diem or something?
Yes, yes, seize the day, yeah. Or seize the night. Carpe noctem if you know, being a night owl. Anyone else? Yes, absolutely. We'll come back to that. Anyone else? Well, this is good to know that at least you have some exploration of it, some background, and at least hearing the words, you can hear it and you know that, oh, that's Latin, I don't know what it means, but you know what it sounds like and you can see it sometimes. That's good. Latin, not super all over the place anymore. It used to be a big part of academic curriculum. It used to be what you learned when you went to school. You were taught all the way through grade school. It was an important thing. It was part of our, our daily life in school. And it's definitely started to make a comeback in the last few decades. So that's exciting. So why Latin? It's kind of a dead language. What is it? So we're going to explore this a little bit together. So I think there are many reasons why Latin is important, why I love it, why I think people should study it, why I think it's a useful tool. Today we're going to focus on 3 of these reasons. One, I think it helps with English grammar and language. It's a big foundational aspect of our language. And additionally, the second point is that it will help you with modern languages as well, particularly the Romance languages. Romance. There you go. And then finally, it gives us a new way of thinking. Latin is a very different language, and it makes you think in ways that English doesn't make you think. So, starting with English and why it's useful for English. Can anybody in here give me a guess as to how much of the English language, particularly its vocabulary, how much percentage-wise do you think is Latin?
98%.
I wish it was, because I love it so much. But no, it's a little less than that.
That's 60.
Very close. It's about 50%. 50% of our vocabulary comes from Latin, some sort of cognate derivatives, absolutely. And about 90% of our polysyllabic words are in fact Latin derivatives. So it is very fundamental to the way our language works, at least as far as how individual words work. The grammar, not so much. But that's absolutely the vocabulary is where we see our Latin coming through. We see it as part of our grammar terminology. In fact, can anyone give me a guess as to where this word comes from? Anyone know? You might know it because if you said the Lord's Prayer.
Our Nostra.
Very close. How about nomen?
Oh, man.
Nomen is the Latin word for name. So a noun is a name that we give to something. This is a table. This is a pen. Those are nouns. So like nomen is in the name of the Lord. How about pronoun? Now that we know where noun came from, can you give a guess as to what pronouns looks like in Latin?
Pronoun.
Exactly. It is pronomen. Pro just means on behalf of or in place of nomen, a name. So something that we put in place of a noun. So the table now becomes it. It is taking the name of table and replacing it with a blank kind of in place of what the name is. So it becomes a pronoun. How about a verb? What do you think that looks like?
Verbatim? Verbatim?
Verbatim is a great example because verbatim means to say something word for word. And verb comes from verbus, which in fact means word. So something we say verbatim is something we say word for word. And the last bit is just a repetitive thing that they add in Latin. What else? Even our tenses come from Latin. So perfect. Perfect comes from, I won't make a guess, per faccio. It just means to do something thoroughly. So if you want to do something perfect, you do it as thoroughly as you can. And so in a similar way, the tense, the perfect tense, is something that is thoroughly done. It's in the past. And then additionally, the perfect becomes a squidging or an elision, big fancy word, plus, I'm going to word it this way, plus quam per factum, which just means more than done, super done, very done. So what happens when we have a done thing and we need to make it more done? We add a helping word. So what's the word that we add when we do the pluperfect tense? Very. We need a helping verb, an auxiliary word. So if something was, I walked to the store, how would you make that pluperfect? Anyone know?
You're like, I did walk.
Very close. More past tense than that. If you were talking about a story where in that story you had walked to the store, I had done this thing. You add have or had, you make it more done than it even was before. Plus quam perfectum. It gets all squished together and all this stuff falls out. You end up with plu perfect. So even our tenses come from Latin. Didn't know what the split infinitive was until I did Latin, because we have what is called the infinitive, which also comes from Latin, infinitive, infinitus, which just means to go on forever. And I'll show you what an infinitive looks like. So anybody who does Spanish will probably know this one. Amo. Amare, what does that mean?
Love.
Yeah, to love. It's part of my name, Amanda. So this verb here, amare, that is our infinitive form in Latin. And that is just means to love indefinitely, the infinitive. So to have a split infinitive, which you can't do in Latin because you can't in any way split this up, but you can in English, and people get mad at you. You know, everybody gets mad at you, don't know split infinitives. It would be like sticking a word to writing in Latin again. It happens all the time. So that would be what it means in English. To have a split infinitive would be to stick something in there, to split your infinitive. So to, deeply love. So that would be a split infinitive. So I didn't know what that was until I did Latin. So you learn all of these things, all these grammatical tools, all these building blocks that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. Additionally, beyond just the grammar, it impacts our daily lives more than you probably realize. It interacts, has a lot of relationships with different professions. Can you think of any professions that might use Latin on a daily basis? Yes?
Psychology?
Psychology, absolutely.
The
Psychology
law,
itself.
medicine.
Law, medicine. What else?
Science.
Science. Scientia. The word itself is Latin. It means knowledge. Anything else?
Biology.
Biology. That's part of the science realm. Biology is the study of life. Bios is life. Logology is the study of life. So that's what biology is.
Astrology.
Astrology.
Theology.
Theology, absolutely. All of these things are deeply impacted by Latin. Without Latin, the terminology completely falls apart. Can you think of any Latin terms that might come up with some of these professions?
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo, what's that mean?
This for that.
Exactly. Big law terms. What else?
It made me think of Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus, absolutely. What's that?
I have no idea.
Do you know what it is in English? Like, what is it? What's habeas corpus? Do you know?
I don't know.
A lot of people
Corpus-
say it.
Corpus has to do with the body?
Absolutely, yes. The corpus has to do with the body. So habeas corpus. That means body. This means it's a subjunctive form. You don't need to know what that means, but it gives extra kind of wishy-washy meaning. It means may you have the body. So when we talk about habeas corpus, we're talking about the legality of detention. So, you know, when you're detained, so may you have the body is what it means. So that's why we use that terminology in law. Any other things we can come up with?
Well, it makes me think of like businesses where we call them corporations.
Exactly, corporations, corpus, body, absolutely. Any other things we can think of off the top of our head?
Terra
Terra firma, firm ground, yes, absolutely. Anything else?
I like AM and PM, anti-meridian,
Absolutely.
post-meridian.
Absolutely. Meridium is a meridiem, half day, ante before, and then post after. So exactly, absolutely right. We use it every day. We didn't even know. That's the way Latin is. Even the most of the periodic table. Did you ever wonder why is that lead? Does anyone know? Because science is hard, absolutely.
The
right.
Latin word for lead has P's and B's in it.
It does in fact. A funny little word, plumbum. Plumbum.
I was a chemistry major and I never knew that.
Same thing with gold. Gold is, yeah, exactly, aurum. Just that little gold. Absolutely. Most of the periodic table, not all of it, will connect back to its Latin roots. Absolutely. How about, going off of the talk that we just had, what about government? Do we see anything in government? Any words that might pop up? Probably words you might not even know. Congress. Senate, absolutely.
Does republic come from Latin?
Respublica. Exactly. How about even words that we didn't really necessarily realize were Latin, like candidate? That comes from the Latin word candidatus, which means to be clothed in white, which is what the senators used to do. They used to bleach their togas and their big, their big fancy white togas that they would, parade around. And so that's where we get candidate, someone who is clothed in white in the big togatas. So absolutely. And moving on from English and how it's useful in our daily lives and maybe in ways we didn't understand or even think about, it is fantastically helpful in learning modern Romance languages. Can we name some of the Romance languages?
Spanish.
Absolutely.
French.
Yes, French.
Perhaps German.
Italian.
German
Or
is,
it's a mix, right?
it's got some in it.
Yeah.
English definitely has a good amount of German. English is actually a Germanic language. What else? I heard someone say something.
Italian.
Italian, absolutely, yes.
Portuguese.
Portuguese, yes.
French?
French, yes. There's also Catalan and a couple others that, they're less, important for our daily basis, but those are the big ones. Absolutely right, yes. It opens up this door to understanding the grammar of these languages, and that's something we don't get to do as much when we learn modern languages. We walk through the door in an Italian class, you instantly get yelled at in Italian, and you're like, and you just get immersion into it, and it's great, but it doesn't mean you always understand the grammar that you're learning. You're memorizing phrases and taking tests on the conjugation and stuff like that, but we don't always get a deep and introverted look into what the language is doing. And Latin really opens up a lot of these doors where you get to see how the language works. Because it's such a different language, we have to do it that way. If you learn Latin, you start seeing things like mihi, dis. That is an I, not an E. Latin, this is how we say, I'm sorry. Mihi dispiace. If you take Italian, all of a sudden you see, me dispiace. Spiace. And all that's happened here is that some letters have fallen off because Italy is hot. And when you get hot, you get with your words. So little bits have fallen off, and that's just naturally what happens with languages. But you start to see these parallels when you take modern languages. But you would never know that this came from mihi, which is a dative form of I and me. But you would never know that if you hadn't taken Latin. You would just learn this is how you say I'm sorry. But you'd never know that it actually means it is displeasing to me. So in both Latin and Italian, when you're sorry, you express your sorriness by saying that what has happened is displeasing to you. And that moves us on to the next and final point, is that learning Latin gives us an entirely new perspective and a new way of thinking, not only about language, but about culture. So we learn from these things how a culture views how different aspects work. So in Latin, to forgive literally means to forget, like agnoscere. It means to forget. So literally in Latin, to forgive is to forget, to not know. It makes our brains function in an entirely different way because it's an inflected language. Now, what does an inflected language look like? Does anyone know what inflected means when it comes to languages? We see it a bit with German, a little bit in English, but not much. An inflected language is a case-based language. Now, what does that mean? That means that when we're looking at how a language is working in a case-based language, an inflected language, we're not looking for the word order. So in English, we do subject, verb, object. The boy loves the dog. We know what's going on in the sentence because of the word order it comes in. In Latin, that is less so. There's some sort of word order. We will generally see it like this: subject, object, verb. So, boy, dog, loves. And so it'll look weird to us, and we won't be able to understand it. But when you see the language, the way you find out what's happening in a Latin sentence is to observe the endings of the words. So in inflected language, we look to the endings to understand the grammar of the sentence. So we would have pure, ed boy, canem, dog. Exactly. Ama.
So we get canine.
So we have our subject here, our object here, and our verb here. And we know this is our object because of the ending. You don't need to know what this ending means or anything. Just know that this this word will change form based on what it's doing in the sentence. It won't always look like that, but the stem of it will stay the same. Same thing with pure. It will change based on where it is in the sentence. And that's also how adjectives work as well. So if we were going to say the boy loves the good dog, you'd end up with this word here. And then you'd notice that in fact it matches. And this word could be anywhere in the sentence. Anywhere in the sentence, especially if it's poetry, because poetry will change to fit meter. Just like we have meter. They do the exact same thing. So you would know that this word goes with this word because it matches in gender, number, and case. More things we won't talk about. But that's what a very simple sentence in Latin looks like. We look to the endings. We know who's doing what by the ending of the verb. We know that this guy's the subject because he's got this weird ending over here that doesn't fit any other case ending in Latin. And that's how we do inflected languages, is to look at the endings. We have it in English a little bit. So like I and me. That's exactly the same thing. It means the same thing. I and me is the same thing. But it's different forms of the word. So I'm going to blow your minds with this. You know how everybody always tells you it's always going to be Jenny and I? It's not always that way. Sometimes it is Jenny and me. And I will explain why. Because this is the subject form of I, This is the object form of I. So, Jenny and I went to the store. That's the subject, so we stay in I form. We switch to object form when we become the object. Now, on our way back from the store, a dog chased Jenny and me. The dog is chasing us, so we become the object in a sentence. Therefore, me becomes the appropriate object case. So sometimes these little things carry over. In fact, this is actually the exact object form of me in Latin, is me. So sometimes it carries over, but not always. And that's because German is a little bit case-based, and English takes a lot of its cues from German. Right. Moving on. So this way of looking at a language is completely different and foreign from how we do, French and Italian and things like that. It opens up our minds to thinking about things logically, like a puzzle, like breaking it down and decoding it. That's why a lot of computer scientists have taken Latin. It opens up your mind to a whole new way of thinking about things. Finally, how does it form our cultures? There's the way that you can view culture through this language, particularly through idioms and things like that. What's an idiom? Does anyone know what an idiom is?
It's a common phrase that communicates an idea.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something that's kind of colloquial. We say, we know what it means. It may or may not make sense to us. Like 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. In Latin, that would be velocitus, quam asperagi con quantum. So we say 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. They say quicker than you could cook asparagus. Is that what I mean?
I knew
That's
it was
asparagus. That's why. Absolutely what that means. Suetonius attributes this to Augustus. Augustus supposedly made up this sentence. So, yeah, while we have idioms like 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, they have quicker than you can cook asparagus. Or, say, that's another good idiom. Holding a tiger by the tail. They have a very similar one. It's aribus teneo lucum.
I have
That's
Holding the wolf.
very, very close. Well, Ari?
here,
Yeah. So what do you hear with?
your ear.
Yeah. So what do you think this means?
The whole of the wolf's ears.
Yeah, exactly. To hold a wolf, I hold a wolf by the ears. So a very similar idea, but you get a different idea of cultural aspects to them. So tigers are probably less common around them. Wolves, much more scary to them because it's a daily thing. And exactly the same thing with the asparagus. Apparently asparagus is part of their diet, so people would know how quick it takes to cook asparagus. So you learn a little bit about a culture when you learn idioms and things like that, and you start to understand how culture works, and in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think. And what about our own culture? Going back to what you said earlier, e pluribus unum, where do we see that?
On our money, on buildings, and sorts of
Exactly.
documents and things.
It's essentially the motto, our old school motto of our country. What does it mean?
From many, one.
Yes, absolutely right. Do you want to know where it comes from?
Yes.
It comes from, ironically enough, one of Virgil's poems, Moritum, which sounds really epic and exciting, but it's this poem about a salad. In that poem, Virgil is actually talking about salad dressing and how out of many ingredients comes a new and exciting and distinct flavor. So there you go. Now you know. So when you look at your money and you see your pluribus unum, remember that's about salad dressing, and it's very important to our history. thank you for your attention in all this. So, kind of trying to round up what we've gone over and the weird bits of Latin that I could show you in such a short period of time. Has your view of Latin changed at all? And if so, how?
Seems more fun than I remember all of you talking about.
Oh yeah, it's way fun.
Kind of makes me wish I'd taken Latin in high school.
I wish I had had the opportunity to take Latin in high school. It's a fantastic, fun language, and it's helped me with so many different aspects of life and building up logic and thinking in different ways and learning all these very interesting ways that the Romans thought. Reading these beautiful texts in the language that they were written in, it's eye-opening to understand what the language is. There's a reason why texts that are written in Latin are written with fewer words than they are when they are translated in English, because you have to come up with so many extra words to get across the certain words that we're using in Latin to get a full understanding of what the text is actually saying. So yeah, it's a fantastic, beautiful language. Anyone else?
I like the way that it's just like these things mean this rather than, I feel like so many other times when you're learning a language, it's like, okay, this is how you say hello, this is how you say goodbye, this is how you ask to go to the bathroom, this is how you say apple, like those sorts of things. You're like, when am I ever going to use this? Whereas with this, it's more so like, oh, I see how our everyday language comes out of this, and it makes, like, to me, this was, I just learned way more than I did an entire year of taking Spanish, so thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, if you want to know how to say hello, that's salve. Salve. That's how you say hello. And if you want to say hello to lots of people, there you go. Salvete.
Yeah.
Yay. So then you said that, and I was like, I know how to say hello.
I think I really like knowing the origins of words,
Mm.
because it helps me understand the meaning of the word in English better. Sometimes when you read in the dictionary, when you understand the origin of the word, it opens it up in a
Oh,
way that
absolutely.
just seeing the dictionary definition does it for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's true for so many words, particularly our polysyllabic words. Those have very deep and complex meanings when you look at what the Latin's doing in them. So,
Yeah.
anyone else?
Like the puzzle aspect.
The puzzle aspect
Really
is a really interesting tool to use, particularly when teaching younger kids, because grammar is such a difficult thing to teach. When you approach it more like a puzzle, like a thing to decode, it's much more exciting. It reveals itself as you translate. So yeah, absolutely. Good. Anyone else?
I too like the thinking aspect, that when you put a phrase up there in Latin and you delve into the meaning of each word and the idea, then you're much further along in your thought process when you're thinking then in your own language or whatever,
Absolutely.
having those roots and having that background.
Exactly. Absolutely right. Yes.
I think it's interesting to see how like it adds a lot of history to like the salad. Like normally you look on a dollar bill and read that, it's like whatever. But now you know that it actually has like a history and it relates back to something.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Everything
right.
relates back to food.
Everything does. Everything important, anyway. Right. And what can we take away from this? What effect does the use of Latin have in our language and culture, do you think?
It makes me want to go play Scrabble.
That's fantastic.
I play a lot of Scrabble with my mom.
Good, good.
So I'm going to beat her now. Very exciting.
It just makes me wonder, without Latin, how would we describe all the things we describe in like law and medicine and science and all these things?
With a lot more words.
Yeah.
Probably Indo-European.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it, I don't know, sometimes when you know what the basis of something is, then you can kind of start guessing at other things too, that,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes helps you guess what a word means.
Exactly. A good thing to know is, anytime students have the opportunity to learn Latin, oftentimes you'll see SAT scores increase by at least 200 points, simply because they have the opportunity to learn these really fundamental aspects that build our vocabulary and contribute to that logic aspect. So it helps from both sides of the test. You've got your word-based stuff, and then you've also got your maths and logic-based stuff. So it helps on a whole level that I think a lot of people are only now starting to really think, because back in the 18th century, science, Latin was the language of science. There's not very many textbooks or articles or things you can read from the 18th century pertaining to science that's not entirely written in Latin. A lot of the old textbooks that I work with, they're entirely written in, these are like modern people in Latin. So it used to be the language of academia. Now it's much less so, but very recently there's a resurgence of it in our schools, and we're seeing our students work harder and learn faster and be able to think critically about subjects in a way that they haven't been able to before. So absolutely, yeah. Anything else?
I was just thinking that especially with the polysyllabic words, even if you don't know what it is, if you've got a Latin background, you're going to be able to deconstruct
Exactly.
that word and maybe translate.
Absolutely, yeah. When you have just basic tools, you don't know a word, you can break it down and at least get a vague idea of what the word could mean. And then, once you learn that word, you're like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense, because in Latin that makes that. So absolutely, that creates these building blocks that we can work with. Absolutely. Anything else? No? Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and your attention. And I hope this was a valuable few minutes for you that in fact went on much longer than I anticipated. I just really, it is one of my largest passions in life, and I'm very much excited to share knowledge that may encourage people to go on and pursue it in their own time. And if you have any questions after this, please feel free to come up to me and chat about it. So thank you so much.